This is the second video about the Deadliest Baki techniques. Enjoy another 5 awesome and dangerous techniques which could damage not only your opponent but the user as well. Heatless Blow is the ultimate form of the match punch. Katsumi refined the match punch technique using Kakukaya's suggestion to imagine that his body is made of thousands of joints. To perform this technique, the user must enter a state of ultimate relaxation and flexibility in his muscles. Then he has to hit his opponent with an arm that imitates a whip. The attack is so fast that it breaks the sound barrier and makes a sonic boom. But after using this technique, the user's arm is also completely destroyed. Katsumi Orochi is the only one who managed to use the Heatless Blow. He used it 3 times against Pickle without any success. But if it would be used against another opponent who is not so solid as Pickle, it would be an incredibly deadly technique, even taking into account that it damaged the body of the user really hard. The name cord cut refers to the countless cords that makes up the human body, which include things such as blood vessels, lymph ducts, tendons and nerves. To use that technique, the fighter must train his fingers to the very limit and study the anatomy of the human body. When the training is completed, the fighter can sever the opponent's cords with a finger. However, this technique had one weakness. Before the fighter can cut a cord, he needs to pull that cord out, which makes a lot of time. Kosho Shinogi mastered this technique to the maximum and even made an improvement. Kosho is the best and the most famous user of this technique. He can easily sever tendons, nerves and other cords within the bodies of his opponents. During the Maximum Tournament saga, Baki also used this move in his fight against Jack Hanma to sever his left optic nerve. So this technique is very dangerous in a fight cause you can use it on your opponent's hand and he could not use it anymore. Also, using this technique somewhere on the neck makes your opponent to lose sight in one eye. Using his palm strength, he can cut through a person's flesh using only his knuckles, which he can do by sticking out the knuckle of his middle finger and swipe at his opponents. Sikorsky angles his middle finger to a certain degree while striking, allowing him to cut open his opponents and give them damaging deadly wounds that would lead to becoming scars. The results are effectively terrifying. This move is known to be Sikorsky's deadliest move and has used it in many of his fights. For example, against the first-class judoka Tateoka and the famous pro wrestler Kanji Igari. Sikorsky nearly killed Alexander Galen in a fight, albeit Galen was still recovering from the fight he had with Jack Hanma. It refers to the book of Thor Noretrandus. In the book, Noretrandus states that people are triggered half a second earlier than the brain orders to move. For example, a knife is flying towards some person. That person is triggered but still unconscious. 0.5 seconds later, the brain orders to move and the action comes. That means between when the person is triggered and when they're conscious, the person is unconscious for 0.5 seconds and others can beat that person as much as they like for 0.5 seconds. It is almost an invisible moment, but Baki has achieved that skill. Baki used the 0.5 second unconscious skill against Biscuit Oliva in the 3rd series of the manga. He also used it against Yujiro Hanma in the last saga of the 3rd series, but Yujiro was able to counter it with the same technique. Pretty cheat technique, cause if you're fast enough you can kill your opponent before he even reacts to your upcoming attack. This technique could only be countered with the same technique, so to not die in a fight with the user of this move, you also should master it.
Until eventually I was capable of creating a perfect vacuum in the palm of my hand. Like this.
The Wacom Palm is a technique in which the user creates a vacuum in the palm of their hand. The Wacom Palm is very difficult to master and requires the proper instruction to learn. With Wacom Palm, the user can create a suction cup-like effect which causes the palm of their hand to stick to an object or surface, or make the object or surface stick to their palm. Yanagi used this technique to create a vacuum in his palm that contains less than 6% of oxygen to knock out his opponents. With this technique, he defeated Baki during their first battle. Very dangerous technique, cause you could knock out your opponent simply by touching his face, which automatically makes this move deadly, cause if you are knocked out, you could not defend yourself.
Me and none of them not travel by any trip. In the seat of corruption, me say me sit. Look like from corruption, them a benefit.